It's episode 8, and it's something a little different. It's our first good guy civilization. Well, they're actually still kind of bad guys. Or maybe they're more bad good guys. Not to be confused with good bad guys like the Kryptonians. It's the United Citizen Federation. From the Starship Troopers film universe. Damn, it feels good to pick on some stupid humans again. And I'll no doubt have to piss off some real humans too. Because unfortunately, due to the nature of this civilization, I'm forced to delve into troublesome political territory once again. I might even have to use the F word a few times. So let's bite this bullet. Starship Troopers the novel is an unapologetic ode to militarism, authoritarianism, nationalism, corporal punishment, and other assorted bootlicking. But now in the movie series, the original source material has been cheekily subverted into a satirical roast of fascism, wrapped in a B-grade sci-fi movie side of bacon.
Medic!
Well, that was the first movie anyway. The rest became, something a little different. The United Citizen Federation was founded by a bunch of surly vigilante veterans, who took it upon themselves to clean up the streets, finally teach them young'uns some respect, and give those scary social scientists the thrashing they deserve.
This year we explored the failure of democracy, how the social scientists brought our world to the brink of chaos. We talked about the veterans, how they took control, and imposed the stability that has lasted for generations since.
This could be the first and only time populist chest thumping has ever amounted to anything. This strange form of government grew to envelop the world. We enter the fray in the year 2197, but now shit has really gotten weird. Because the UCF are a confused bunch of rainbow fascists. Sure, they do have a lot of the characteristics of regular Nazis. They've got the symbolism, the propaganda and near totalitarian control down pat. But then they allow a limited form of democracy. Racism doesn't seem to be a thing at all. And women not only hold powerful positions, but they also subject us to copious amounts of boobage in the name of equality, as they take their place with the males in the frontline forces. And thus, the United Citizen Federation has the distinct pleasure of being highly irritating to almost everyone, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum. You know your shit is politically heavy when Germany and Japan need special cuts made just for them. And just as the original movie itself was somewhat divisive, so too is the society of the United Citizen Federation. Point 1. A harsh society divided by design. Rebellion becomes inevitable. The United Citizen Federation is an authoritarian republic-style limited democracy which exalts military service, strict obedience, and the use of force above all else.
And force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authority is derived. Naked force has resolved more issues throughout history than any other factor.
I have studied violence for over 100 years.
The UCF's military operations branch is the Federal Armed Services, which is led by a Sky Marshal, who is only answerable to the Federation Council, itself comprised of former military veterans. This ever-churning war machine manipulates its young population into signing up with the Federal Armed Services in vast numbers. But first, you must suffer through middle American college life, the prom, and football. They're all totally still things. We tag along with best friends forever, Carmen, Johnny, and Doogie Himmler, as they navigate life in the armed forces and purge the last remaining trace of humanity from their beings. I suppose this is the expected result when the director of RoboCop meets the cast of Beverly Hills 90210. Federation society is strictly divided into two groups, civilians and citizens. Citizenship can only be obtained through military and civil service, or by submitting yourself to scientific experimentation. Citizens are granted a range of rights that normal civilians do not have. It's easier to get a license to have children. You have the right to vote and enter politics. You can get a free education, plus plenty of other perks.
Federation pays my way.
I want to have babies.
You'll also have the smug sense of superiority that comes with being a citizen. including spitting rights towards those lazy, selfish civilians.
A citizen accepts personal responsibility for the safety of the body politic, defending it with his life. A civilian does not.
But there's no reason to get too down if you're part of the civilian underclass. There's still hope, because rich civilians can just buy most of the citizen perks anyway. New system, same old cronyism. The intention of the citizen versus civilian policy is to bring a large chunk of the population into the government fold, giving power and special treatment to a chosen class of people, who then enforce the rules and promote the ideologies onto wider civilian society, and the next generation thereafter. But the drawback of this system is that it pits the population against each other, and creates resentment towards the citizens and the inner party, a sentiment that could eventually develop to become a seriously destabilizing force in their society. Dissent becomes even more likely when the UCF's ideology is propped up by super obvious propaganda and embellishments.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
People say boys don't give good HED, but I do.
Well, what people fail to grasp is just how many planets there are in the universe, and that the universe itself often destroys other planets.
That bit of sophistry is not terribly persuasive.
Which are so easily dismissed. I'm surprised anyone at all buys into it. The most glaring example of piss-poor propaganda is in Marauder.
Blame falls squarely on Colonel John Rico. Once heralded as the hero of Planet P, now disgraced and awaiting court-martial from his cell at the Alamo Bay Federal Detention Facility.
When former hero Johnny Rico is seemingly executed publicly for insubordination, only to appear on state TV as a hero again not long after.
See you on the bounce, trooper.
Right. Despite using propaganda to manipulate public knowledge of events, the UCF weirdly tells the truth at times, mostly admitting when they've suffered horrific losses.
The Rokusan line, key to the Federation's defense, knows defeat in one night.
They also seem to tolerate counter-narratives on the federal network, though in a limited state-controlled capacity.
Creation of a weapon that can destroy the very planet on which I now stand is nothing if not a dangerous precedent for the entire human race.
If you're going to be lying anyway, why not go all the way? Though despite some liberties gifted to the public, civilian and citizen alike are subject to a myriad of strict, though sometimes vague, rules and procedures.
Enroll in the federal service for not less than 2 years, and as much longer as may be required by the needs of the Federation.
This Breckenridge yokel got shot through the eye. Whether his helmet was on or not didn't really matter. Rico got punished harshly for it anyway. Apparently this doctor and captain might both hang for rightly declaring a superior officer unfit for duty.
Is the SM unfit for command? If I need to assume command, I'm gonna need your help because the others won't understand.
We could both hang.
Romantic competition guy will have his flight status revoked if his student exceeds a speed limit.
Don't exceed port speed,
Or what?
or they revoke your flight status. And mine.
That really doesn't seem fair. Ratshit says he will shoot you if you don't do your job.
You don't do your job, I'll shoot you.
Though these rules are strict in punishment, not really in adherence to them. Whether you are subject to any given rule or policy ultimately depends on if your boss likes you or not, and since the narrative of events are sometimes twisted to suit political goals. This is a system that is rife for abuse. Something like minor insubordination may be laughed off by your commanding officer, or it may result in a court-martial where other trumped-up charges will be added, and that's if they even specify a crime, with seemingly no recourse, appeals, or fair trial to speak of. A guilty verdict is a foregone conclusion, and the death penalty is handed out liberally. This is actually where people chasing citizenship have a disadvantage. The closer you are to the political machinery, the greater the chance that your head will end up in a noose. And as we'll soon discover, your chances of dying in conflict itself are exceptionally high too. Life in the Federal Armed Services is to navigate a confusing and highly risky political environment, where the odds of falling foul of the system are almost 100% if you stick around there long enough. So of course the UCF has a notable history of punishing and passing over some of their most effective warriors and leaders.
The only way you're gonna see combat is if you bust yourself to private. Get me?
Rico is eventually known as the hero of Planet P, and though he did deserve a hefty credit, it was Private Zim that caught the brain bug. But as we've seen, the tide eventually turns against Rico himself. This legendary hero gets demoted and re-promoted so many times it's hard to keep track of his rank.
John A. Warden, this is General Rico. Come in.
Don't be so hard on yourself, Colonel.
General Rico?
This is a system which lacks any certainty and encourages disloyalty in its officers and troops, a scenario that could easily be taken advantage of by dissident agents. It's no wonder the UCF eventually develops peace-loving rebels. Their system can be incredibly harsh, dangerous, and unfair to some people, and they've been encouraged to question the war on official government channels. It also doesn't help that the state-controlled internet is susceptible to rogue uploads. When you allow debate, you must inevitably allow the public to form differing opinions and consensus, and then an expectation that the will of the people must be acted on. But the UCF only allows the higher echelons of the government and federal armed services to dictate civil and military policy, and therefore the only choice left for the doubters is to rebel. As usual, there are some real-life parallels that can be drawn between the United Citizen Federation and our very own stupid governments. The difference being we aren't at war with the highly dangerous alien species. So let's go back to when the UCF gets a proper justification for their obsession with the military, the great enemy, the other, the faceless and conveniently icky foe that is the arachnids. Or bugs, that bear nothing but a passing resemblance to either, but okay, at least now it's not much of a jump to imply your enemies are cockroaches. That's convenient. So now comes time to test their might. But despite their military grandeur and all of their efforts, what the UCF brings in a fight is not all that impressive. Point 2. A militaristic society where quality military hardware is scarce, and military tactics and strategy are severely lacking. The Terrans are definitely an advanced civilization in some regards, with a faster-than-light drive so epic it's allowed them to colonize the far-flung reaches of the galaxy. But their success so far has been contingent on a complete lack of opposition, because their military tactics and most of their technology are extremely basic. The Federal Armed Services is primarily comprised of the mobile infantry, the fleet, and military intelligence. None of these branches seem to get along with each other, which isn't a great start.
Mobile infantry and fleet don't mix. Come on.
But when it comes to frontline tactical shortcomings, the cannon fodder that is the mobile infantry are the clear frontrunners. Literally. Their main strategy in the war against the bugs is to deploy hordes of unsupported infantry onto open ground with little cover. It's like World War I in space. Air support is extremely intermittent, armoured ground vehicles are all but non-existent. And worse, the majority of these poor saps can't even fire most of the time without blowing away their fellow soldiers. The mobile infantry initially don't utilise any effective type of line formation, instead relying on a single front row of soldiers to defeat massive waves of incoming enemies.
It is so much more overwhelming than one expects.
Unsurprisingly, this really seems to work. So other, more advanced troop maneuvers which increase your chances of survival obviously aren't going to be standard procedure either. This whole mess is made exceedingly worse when you consider that the bugs can pretty much pop up anywhere, and they also have commanders who actually practice basic strategy.
As chess is to tic-tac-toe.
Though once deployed, the warrior arachnids aren't capable of much higher thought. Mostly, they mindlessly race towards their enemies until told otherwise. There are any number of ways this could be taken advantage of, though certain units definitely seem to have more effective leadership than others. These shortcomings are systemic. Obviously the fault of the mobile infantry's administration, which has given inadequate training to their troops. We see Rico go through basic grunt training, and it's primarily geared towards warfare against other humans, specifically in urban environments. Where's this gun war going to be? Sure, they could be preparing for the inevitable rebel uprising, and they technically weren't at war with the bugs as of yet. But since small skirmishes with the arachnids had already occurred at this point, and the UCF were ramping up their anti-bug propaganda, it would be fairly wise to train for the possibility of a Terran arachnid war. Or you could just run off to war completely unprepared for the type of battle you're about to engage in. Why not? It's no wonder these guys are falling over in a stiff breeze. Playing dead could actually be the most viable survival strategy you have. This lack of battle preparedness also extends to the soldiers' terrible operation of their firearms and their poor composure under pressure. The unlucky soldiers who find themselves in a position to actually fire their guns will often panic and spray rounds in the direction of the bugs. Bad training aside, there is little excuse for this, because Doogie Himmler himself told the entire Federation about the best way to kill the bugs.
Here's a tip. Aim for the nerve stem and put it down for good.
Implying controlled bursts are most effective. The mobile infantry's inadequacies also extend to their battlefield kit and technology, or lack thereof. The average grunt is kitted out with very light armor, so ineffective in protecting against bug attacks you'd be better off wearing nothing at all. At least then you could run faster. Again, this armor seems better suited to protecting against enemies with guns, and even that's a maybe. Now to the mobile infantry's primary weaponry, the original Morita assault rifle.
I don't read any recognizable weapon signatures.
It looks like a toy, or what you would imagine a Space Marine's rifle to look like, so it's no surprise that it's very poorly suited to war against the bugs. An automatic machine gun using 20th century ammunition with a shotgun which may have been good for Rico, but usually, if the bugs are within its range, it's probably too late for you. The Morita Mark I rifle doesn't even have iron sights, which is the bare minimum required for delivering controlled bursts. The only redeeming quality of this weapon is that it seemingly has a clip containing hundreds of bullets. Your grunts can spray away to their heart's content. But why would a conventional projectile weapon be your first choice anyway? This is a war where your weapons should be all about area of effect. The infantry do have hand grenades, which they use sporadically. But even the distance of a grenade throw is a bit too close for comfort when you're dealing with a fast-moving enemy horde. I have to admit, the UCF do develop some cool toys later on. But considering their society is highly militaristic, you'd assume their scientific research and industrial infrastructure would be geared to create a massive supply of effective military hardware. But what good stuff they end up developing seems to be deployed sparingly. A glorified bug zapper defense system, good for maintaining a tenuous foothold and not much more. The motion detector from Aliens. This epic gun that we never see used in combat. And their most powerful weapon, this Death Star level WMD, the Q-bomb. Because who needs the habitable bug worlds we were trying to invade on foot? Now the UCF can just blow them up, and probably themselves later when they run out of enemies. But most impressively, the piece of hardware that should have been deployed from day one. Mech walkers. Finally. And the weapons on these things tear it up good and proper. But despite these improvements, deploying troops with clunky conventional weaponry remains the norm. Though at least the Morita Mark III assault rifle has a built-in scope and a nifty grenade launcher, and their new power armor can withstand a glancing blow from an arachnid warrior. They even marginally improved their overall tactics, including their troop line formations. At least now they can hold their own in a narrow, defensible location. The one fairly effective weapon the mobile infantry have and use on a consistent basis is these tactical oxygen nukes. Though whether ground troops should be delivering these types of payloads is another matter of debate. Surely this is a war where deploying infantry is a bad idea most of the time. Granted, you may have to catch the occasional brain bug, but nuking bug holes has to be the daily grind. Artillery, these fast attack ships and/or drones would be more effective at both finding and destroying bug hives, with the added advantage of not sacrificing hundreds of thousands of troops to get the job done. Ideally, the mobile infantry would be the mop-up crew after you've destroyed the majority of hives. Or you could just mount nukes directly to the shoulder of your most bumbling soldier, I guess. As usual for most dumb sci-fi civilizations, the UCF is undertaking risky missions that could have been achieved with the majority of their forces in the safety of high orbit. So you just know that things aren't going to be good over at the Aerospace Division of the Federal Armed Services, the aptly named fleet. They're hanging out in space, yet somehow they still get messed up all the time. These Corvette transport ships are bunching up and going in close to deploy these dropships. This leaves them highly vulnerable to bug plasma attacks, one of which can destroy a massive ship easily. So it seems the UCF needs to redesign their entire troop deployment system. A fleet of smaller, long-range, maneuverable craft could be a solution to avoiding bug plasma attacks entirely. It's obvious by now that the basic tactics and technology of the Federal Armed Services is lacking. But as usual, the higher we go, the more serious it gets. For the UCF serves an ideology that demands war, but its reckless military administration is rarely capable of achieving victory. Point 3. A society utterly devoted to war with a dysfunctional military administration puts their civilization at great risk. Yep, the terrible setup we've seen on the battlefield had to originate from somewhere. So let's continue our journey up and look at some of the more direct cock-ups of the officer and administrative class. Back in basic training, Drill Sergeant Zim says he wants his cadets to act with extreme caution during this live fire exercise.
You will exercise extreme caution on my assault course.
But then also expects them to better the record score.
Maximum score has been 280. I expect you to do better.
Mixed messages much? Johnny is a sweetheart who says I love you after one night together.
I love you.
But he's also a violent jock dupe who ends up continuing the cycle of brainless devotion to war.
Come on, you apes, you wanna live forever!
Not really a relevant mistake, but pretty stupid and icky.
Oh, he just wants some attention. You don't play with him anymore.
Carmen decides to change the flight course without consulting her superior officers.
I replotted the course. It's more efficient this way.
Which ends up putting them in a path directly with this bug meteor.
Starship cannot run without protocols.
Carmen caused this entire situation, but Captain Deladier gives her nothing more than praise.
Look at me.
We have a hell of a flight team.
I'm the captain now.
In fact, Carmen is consistently indulging in risky, unnecessary behavior, and no one ever corrects her. Nope, she's straight to the top.
This is the captain speaking.
This guy Baba somehow gained the rank of lieutenant despite being a bumbling idiot, ill-suited to life in the mobile infantry. Literally anyone else in this unit would be a more suitable leader. Of course his story arc redeems his character's inadequacies, but normally you get the promotion after you prove yourself, not before. But that's not surprising when you consider that the entire Federal Armed Services is plagued by nepotism. There seems to be no due process when it comes to giving promotions. It's not what you know, it's who you know, with little thought given to who suits the role when a rank needs filling.
I need a corporal. You're it until you're dead, or till I find somebody better.
Often, the commanding officer will just look to see which one of their mates is nearby, and boom, you're promoted.
Looks like I'm your girl, sir.
I hear they need a new lieutenant. Want the job?
I'll take it.
But opportunities for promotion on a starship must be earned.
Despite attempting to train the frontline fodder on the basic weapon operation they failed to grasp, Heinrich Hauser can take his fair share of the blame too.
I thought there might be a brain bug on P.
You knew and you sent them anyway?
He admits that they intentionally sent in the mobile infantry to see if there was a brain bug around. With a low survivability rate, they did it anyway, in callous regard of the human toll.
You don't approve? Well, too bad.
Okay, I guess that is pretty normal for military decision makers, flag that. But errors should be no surprise when you consider that military intelligence is overrun by shady psychics.
Gorgos! Psychics!
It's the PsyOps division, who seem to conduct most of their missions in secret, keeping officers who need to know out of the know, often putting the entire Terran campaign at risk.
Telepathic abilities are undisciplined.
Even General Rico has no idea what his mate Carl is up to.
This is a mission that's so classified, I don't even know what the hell is really...
And look how well it's going.
This PsyOps division seems to be mostly for shits and giggles. we rarely see any sort of advantage gained from their insights. In fact, we can directly blame them for at least 2 massive defeats, until CG Doogie Himmler figures out how to mind control warrior bugs. Yeah, that's pretty alright, I guess.
Tampering in dark-sided stuff!
Psychics aside, the supposed military intelligence branch produces a constant stream of the shonkiest intel around.
Our best defense is knowledge.
During the first large-scale conflict, the Battle of Klendathu, pretty much all of their intel about the bug's capabilities and numbers ends up being completely wrong.
Someone made a big goddamn mistake!
The UCF suffered a massive 300,000 casualties before they called a full retreat. 100,000 died in the first hour alone.
Plasma, ma'am, from the planet.
Bug batteries. According to military intelligence, it'll be random and light.
Bug batteries. Random and light? Yes, the bugs are shooting plasma out their asses just for fun, according to military intelligence. These oversights in strategy are so grave, I'm now not sure whether better weaponry and training would have helped those poor doomed souls on the ground. And the higher we go, the more catastrophic the cock-ups get, and the more standard white people we encounter with weirdly ethnic sounding names.
Sky Marshal Omar Anoki, Admiral Enolo Fid, Division Chief, Fleet Intelligence.
Firstly, credit where credit's due. After the calamity at Klendathu, Sky Marshal Deans took the rap for their shortcomings, though he may be more a patsy than anything. But the incoming Sky Marshal does adjust their strategy for the better, choosing to use the mobile infantry for mop-up duty. In general though, most of these Sky Marshals are absolute dicks. As head of the Federal Armed Services, these Sky Marshals wield an inordinate amount of power, and therefore we can pretty much blame them for everything previously mentioned and the high-level strategic failings to come. And like other authoritarian command structures we've seen, their actions and policies create a ripple effect, which is responsible for creating the culture of fear throughout the Federal Armed Services, where mistakes are best covered up and where people are safest when they're completely inconsequential. The Sky Marshals are only answerable to the Federation Council and the Prime Counselor, who we don't really get a good look at. So let me just gloss over that by saying, with all this going on, how could they possibly not suck? But normally, the Sky Marshals are pretty much autonomous and often have agendas that act against the UCF's own goals. In Traitor of Mars, Sky Marshal Amy Snap knowingly allowed Mars to become infested with bugs to crush the local anti-war pro-independence movement. But don't worry though, because she's actually going to blow Mars up entirely. For ratings.
Leading the Federation is about responsibility.
No. It's all about ratings, Carl.
A cracked planet in our own solar system. I'm not sure if that's going to be better than the rabble-rousing Terran colony it's replacing. Sky Marshal Omar Anoki got his mind violated by this brain bug, and developed a massive hard-on for this planet-sized god bug, eventually giving up the location of this sanctuary place, the destruction of which will apparently result in the total defeat of the Terran Federation.
If the bugs find this place, they'll knock out the fleet.
No fleet, you lose the outer colonies. Next stop, Earth.
Yeah.
Sheesh, maybe decentralize your forces a bit? But how secret can this sanctuary place really be when they're mentioning it blatantly on the Federal network?
I'd fly a starship, or even visit Sanctuary.
Soon to be Sky Marshal Enolo Fid rightly dethrones this Omar Anoki traitor, but concerningly she did it via a nefarious backroom conspiracy and a false flag terror attack which she blamed on a disabled war protester and his friends. But here's where it gets crazy. The brain bug that mind molested Omanoki was actually the one that was captured in the very first movie. It was a sleeper agent this entire time, tasked with striking a savage blow at the heart of the Federation. So this means the UCF has ultimately been defeated in almost every single mission we've ever seen them undertake. The UCF eventually sinks to a new low when it embraces religion as a tool of control.
She's not a Christian!
Which just can't be a good idea in the long run. But there's also a general dumbing down of the population that may occur in the future. This is a system designed so that only the most shit-swallowing of government dupes have the right to vote and stand for government. Combine this with easier access to breeding rights and you can probably guess the way they're going. By the time we get to Trader of Mars, the entire UCF population seems so stupid, the near total majority agree that blowing up Mars because of a few bugs and rebels is a great idea. This stupidity isn't exactly preferable from the administration's perspective either, as the population seem just as capable of turning on the government at any time. But of all the mistakes the administration has made over the years, perhaps the most grievous is the simple fact that they have never given peace a chance with the arachnids. The bugs have intelligent leaders capable of higher thought. They have the capacity for reason, and therefore peace negotiations could at least be attempted.
We must find a way to contact our friends.
In a devastating civilization-threatening war like this, it's worth a shot. In Starship Troopers 3, we see that indeed, communication and some form of negotiation is possible with the bugs.
We do seek peace, but by different means.
Sure, it turned out it was all a big manipulation aimed at wiping out the Terrans. But by now, the bugs are within their rights to be ending this pointless war by any nefarious means at their disposal. But we actually already know that some form of peace is achievable. Because when the arachnids were first discovered, their area of space was quarantined by the Terrans. And there was no conflict until the stupid humans started invading their territory. Yes, it's easy to miss, but this war was started by Terran incursions onto bug home worlds.
As we have not yet established the inhabitants' intentions, it would not be a logical course of action.
It's portrayed as being the fault of some Mormon extremists, but there were other incidents hinted at as well, no doubt caused by the UCF itself. These guys lost their limbs somewhere. The arachnids responded with a devastating attack on Earth, but that doesn't seem like a completely unreasonable response, to be honest. But there may be darker motivations for the Terrans' obsession with this war, which would conveniently excuse a lot of their mistakes as well. For the UCF and its society may require an enemy and war simply to prevent their civilization from eventually turning on itself and imploding. It's not a stretch to come to the conclusion that they may have intentionally started this entire conflict, using it as a means of uniting the population against a common enemy, enforcing the militaristic social order, and perhaps even as a population control effort. The people with the lowest educational scores do most of the dying after all.
You are making wild assumptions.
Are we even sure the bugs are responsible for sending these damn meteors? They're supposedly being launched from Klendathu on the other side of the galaxy, tens of thousands of light years away. These rocks are said to be knocked onto their flight path by bug plasma. It's very doubtful they're traveling faster than light. These bugs really must be smart if they can launch a precision attack against Earth from millions of years in the past.
Witches! I don't want to see anything! Any stars! I don't want to see any of this dark side and psychics! All the things! Tarot card reading!
It's not clear whether this war was started intentionally by the UCF or whether they accidentally started it due to their ignorance of the bugs' intelligence and capabilities. But whatever the case, this highly risky war is being maintained by the Federation to this day. And no matter which scenario, the most prevalent attribute of the United Citizen Federation is stupidity. Though it seems even that could be intentional. I'd like to think I have the writer and director's seal of approval on this one. Would you like to know more? Then make sure you are subscribed and don't forget to spray some rounds towards that like button.